Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. A real honor and pleasure for me tonight to introduce you to Jeanne Beker, who is someone who I've admired and followed over the years in fashion and in media and lots of other things. And she, I found out, was on the first cover of a magazine that I quite enjoy because I met Jennifer Lipkowitz, who is the publisher of Living Lux magazine. And she showed me the cover of her very first magazine that she just launched a couple of years ago. And Jeanne Beker is on the front of it. So Jeanne Beker and Jennifer Lipkowitz, welcome to my show. Welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Brian. We're good. I'm, as good as can be expected. Crazy times. We're sort of hanging in and hanging on. Sometimes it feels like for dear life, quite the roller coaster, but try to stay positive.
Excellent. Well, I like that. And Jennifer, tell me if you could a little bit about why you picked Jeanne Beker as the cover for your very first issue of the Living Lux magazine.
First of all, Jeanne and I have been friends, I would say for at least probably 7 or 8 years. She's an amazing woman. I mean, in her own right, she's so talented. She's so kind. I mean, for those of us that know her, obviously she's very endearing and she's just a really great person and always has inspired me. So when we were looking at covers together, and also Jeanne Beker is our lifestyle editor. So we were going back and forth together actually saying, well, who should it be? And I said, you know what, Jeanne, I'd really like for it to be you. And Jeanne was very humble and said, well, it's your first issue, like really? And I said, you know what, Jeanne, I really would like for it to be you. And I really felt very strongly about it. And we spoke to our editorial team and they agreed and said, you know what, it should be Jeanne Beker. So that, Jeanne Beker was our first cover model.
Well, congratulations.
But interestingly, Brian, I mean, it was almost as though Jennifer had to twist my arm. And listen, it's a wonderful honor to be on the cover of any magazine, especially one as prestigious as Living Lux, and the debut issue, that was a big deal. But I'm not that, let's see, the word isn't really proud, because I am proud of it, but I don't really think my home, and I'm very blessed to have 2 homes, a country home, which I'm at right now, and my city home. I don't really think my home is a great designer showcase. You know what I mean? It's a home. It's really where I live, where I hang my hat, where I throw my parties, but I never really thought of it as being that magazine worthy. So I was very reluctant for Jennifer and the crew to come into the house and shoot it that way. So we decided that the angle for my story could be my art collection, because I love art and I think everybody should hang lots of it on their walls if possible. So that's the angle we took, and it ended up being a lovely story and a good time. But I'm a little insecure, I guess, about my residence. I didn't think it was magazine worthy, but anyway, we did it and it was a good time. And I think you were happy with the results, right, Jen?
Absolutely. And everyone remembers my inaugural issue. And they said, even someone today actually said to me, can you send me the first cover of the magazine with Jeanne Beker on it? And I said, you know what, I have to dig it up. I think I only have 3 or 4 copies left. There's not many left. So still people from, this came out September of last year of 2019. So I still have people requesting that first cover because they remember it. They remember the inaugural issue had Jeanne Beker on it. And, I kept 2 copies now in my house. So one of these copies actually is being sent to a lady actually that I'll be promoting on my Instagram live on Thursday, because her, one of her favorite icons is Jeanne Beker. So I said, I'll dig up that magazine. I'll get it to you. And I'm actually sending it in Uber tonight.
Well, ladies, I've got news for you. I just last week was on the cover of a Toronto magazine as well, which was really quite something else for me. But they weren't showing my house or my art collection yet. So that'll be the next step when Living Lux wants to come and photograph me. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about your current cover and a gentleman that I understand the story was written by Jeanne Beker. Is that true? Who is the cover?
The cover is a wonderful designer by the name of Alessandro Munge. And Alessandro is a brilliant talent. He's a visionary, came here as a young child from Italy with his family. So this is a great feel-good story about an immigrant who really managed to rise to the top of his field. And now Alessandro is recognized internationally, he has done some of the most amazing spaces and places, not only in Toronto, some of the great restaurants, some of the great hotels, but also he has done work all over the world in far-flung places. And he's just a great, bold visionary. Listen.
Well, I look forward to hearing
Yeah.
hearing the story about him. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with Jeanne Beker and Jennifer Lipkowitz, the publisher of Living Lux magazine, and hear more about this gentleman and his design work. And then later on, we're going to hear about Jeanne Beker and her career and what she thinks about fashion and what's going on. So those are going to be our next two segments on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Someone who I have followed for a long period of time. I used to go to Toronto Fashion Week and then watch on TV the segments with Jeanne Beker, someone who I think is well known to all of us in the Toronto area, and Jennifer Lipkowitz, a young burgeoning entrepreneur who's launched a magazine. And I think how brave, launching a lifestyle luxury magazine called Living Lux. In the last couple of years. And so I think while Jeannie's got that incredible career and that great history, Jennifer is going to be someone to look forward to and her influence on culture and art and fashion and design coming up in the future. So two incredibly wonderful ladies to have joined us today. But for the next couple of minutes, we're going to be talking about Jeannie's story that is the cover in Jennifer's current issue of Living Lux magazine. And maybe, Jeanne, you can tell us a little bit more about this gentleman.
Well, we decided to profile Alessandro Munge because he has a big, bold vision. He's a wonderful designer of interiors and spaces and an architectural kind of designer who really is just not afraid to make a statement. Of course, he has some very heavy duty clients that he has to work with and appease, but he has really taken design to the next level, especially in our city in Toronto. For example, some of the spaces that he's designed, I don't know if you've been to them, but if you have been, wow, you know what I'm talking about. The Beker Hotel. Just an extraordinary hotel that was masterminded originally by Charles Caboth, who was a very well-loved, very seasoned restaurateur in our city. And Charles, a few years back, decided to open a hotel, and it took a while to get it just right, but he chose the very, very talented Alessandro to do it. And there's a sense of drama and there's a sense of theater. I remember going there on the opening night, and I was just, blown away. Really, my socks were knocked off. But the kinds of restaurants also that Alessandro has designed is proof that he has that air for theatricality, that flamboyance about him that is just so irresistible. And I think really necessary in this day and age to grab someone's attention.
Can I ask you a couple of questions? I have been at the Beker Hotel. The bar on the main level is very wood, very dark, almost sort of, I would have thought, back to what I would have thought about in New York City 20 or 30 years ago in design. And then upstairs, the restaurant on the top floor, very modern and sparse and light wood and surrounded by glass in the pool. So two extremely different feels on the main floor versus the top floor.
Absolutely. And I think that's exactly what makes great design, when there's a kind of unexpected juxtaposition, when there are stories that are being told, when we come to see the unexpected. That's what is the big turn on about what Alessandro does. You really never know which way he's going to go, but it's going to be bold, and that he's going to make a statement. I don't know if you've been to the restaurant Sophia, another beautiful place.
Yes.
In Yorkville. That's just like, wow, just dazzling, really. He's working on the new Nobu Hotel, which will have restaurant obviously in it, the famed Nobu, of course, that's coming to Toronto. And he's just done a number of wonderful hotels that maybe, Jennifer, you can elaborate on some of the great restaurants that he's created in partnership with Charles Caboth as well.
So he recently actually completed a beautiful restaurant. It's a Lebanese restaurant. Charles and I actually spoke, and so did Alessandro. We did an interview at Amal, and wow, like I have to say, it's breathtaking. I mean, you go to this restaurant and it's white, it's clean, but then there's all this color and texture, and that's the thing with with Alessandro, is that his designs are very elegant, they're very clean, but yet they're so dramatic, and it all works really well together because he has such a great, comprehensive design style, that he has just this uniqueness about him. Like when I was walking to all these restaurants, we actually filmed it. So we, filmed my reaction, because I'd never, believe it or not, I'd never been to the Bisha Hotel. So he really wanted to see my reaction. And he's like, Jennifer, I just want to see like what you think of my design. So like, I don't want you to look at, I never looked at any images, believe it or not, because his team were going to send me a whole package of what to expect. And I actually asked them not to. I said, I really want to take it in as though it's my first time. And the same thing happened, I walked through a mall, and I actually never been to Sofia. So the same thing happened when I walked into Sofia. And it almost feels like it's a different designer, because when you look at Sofia restaurant and then you look at Amal and the different aesthetics and, formats of how he does it, I mean, he really does. He's just so special and talented. And in the magazine, we actually covered, it's actually 5 double-page spreads, so 10 pages of his, some of his projects that he currently did. And we have him at his office. So I'm just going to show everyone some pictures. So the cover of the magazine is at the Bisha Hotel. And then we have Alessandro here in his office. And his office is just mind-blowing. It's beautiful. It's colorful. He loves to layer art in. And it's just so beautiful. When I was going in, I was just so impressed by this office space. And then you look at it.
The Bisha Hotel, on the different floors, there's an incredible art collection with a lot of Andy Warhol art and other things. Is that something he would have picked and put into the hotel as well?
Yeah, he would have had a strong say in that, no question. He works with a whole team. His studio is just phenomenal, and they all just really respect him and look up to him in a sense, because he's such a strong leader. As I said, he's such a visionary. So of course, art is very important to him. To understand Alessandro's early beginnings, though, I think it's to really appreciate just how far this guy's come. His mom, he came here from Italy when he was about 5 years old. His mom was in the drapery business, and they lived out near Woodbridge, Ontario, I believe. And he used to accompany his mother on the outings when she was trying to woo clients and for her very small little drapery business. And he would sit there in the corner, and just doodle or do his own thing as his mom, sort of hustled and tried to sell her wares. And then at one time, apparently there was one client who just couldn't get his or her idea across to his mom well enough. And they had a kind of a design problem that they couldn't figure out. In the meanwhile, Alessandro found this all very intriguing, and he started to sketch out on a piece of paper how he thought this design problem could be solved. And he suggested it to his mom and the client, and they just went, Eureka, this is so fabulous. And the client just fell in love with Alessandro's work and said, yes, let's do it. Let's do it the way this kid. And I think he was about 14 years old at the time,
That's a great story.
He really had a talent from early on, and then he studied at Ryerson. He was an apprentice and then actually worked for Yabu Pushelberg, that very famous international Toronto-based design team as well. And then he finally branched off to do his own thing. And it was at a time when Charles Caboth was starting a wonderful nightclub in downtown Toronto that you may remember, called The Government, a very dark, dramatic, crazy, cavernous place that Alessandro had a hand in designing and coming up with a concept for. And that place was wildly successful. And, then the rest is history. But interesting from those humble beginnings that he has really, put his stamp on the cultural and design landscape of not only our country. He's working on a fantastic project right now that will be revealed next year in Halifax, a hotel that makes a lot of use out of artisanal offerings. So, for example, they're going to be hand hooked rugs decorating the place. And, everything that we know and love about the East Coast is going to manifest itself in this wonderful hotel in Halifax that he's working on. As Jennifer said, his approach to design is so eclectic. You just never know what to expect. And he's really...
where does design ideas or your creativity, this creative ability come from? Is something that genetically you're born with, or is it something that you get because your mom's a fabric drapery designer and you learn from her? Like, where does it come from?
Brian, that is such an interesting question, because obviously it's what we all wonder about, nature versus nurture. Like, how much is it, within us inherently, and how much are we really shaped by our environments and our upbringings and what we're exposed to? I think it's a little bit of both. I think especially to reach that height. And it's not like, he's reached the acme of his career. I think he has much further to go, Alessandro, because he's still relatively young, in great scheme of things. But I really think that his mother certainly opened his eyes to the world of aesthetics. I mean, if she was into fabrics and draperies and the way to hang a drape, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. And I've seen this with so many of the world's great designers. So many of them said, oh yeah, my mom was a dressmaker growing up. So, they get exposed to certain things, but then it's up to them to take the ball and really run with it and really, leave the field with it, which is what Alessandro's done. He's very much an out of the box thinker. He'll do a great commercial project for you, I'm sure, but he's going to do it his way. And his clients usually do give him that carte blanche because he's proved himself so many times.
The Beker Hotel is interesting because it almost feels like you're going into a special club. You think about the typical hotel, it'll have a revolving front door, a lot of glass. There you've got the big wooden doors and it's dark in the lobby and small lobby versus the big, huge cavernous lobbies that you'll see in a lot of business hotels. Again, the dark sort of wooden, lobby bar. It's interesting. It's, I don't know if you agree. It's almost as, to my mind, a throwback. What do you think? Does design go in cycles? Does it?
Oh. Unquestionably, yes. Design in the fashion world, they say there's about a 20-year sway of the pendulum, and it does come back every 20 years or so. Well, you think of 20 years as like a generation. So that makes sense, right? Because everything old becomes new again to that new generation that hasn't experienced it yet. But there's a great penchant that we all have for nostalgia, for just like how you're talking, Brian, about how it gives you a cool kind of feeling if you walk in and it's a bit of a throwback. There's sort of an air of familiarity to it, yet at the same time you're being taken to a new place and you're going to have a whole new experience. I love that mixing of the eras, and we see that reflected very profoundly and very effectively in fashion, mixing the eras, mixing something vintage with something modern. And it's that play that I think makes life so interesting.
It's interesting. I have a house that's got a lot of wood and wainscoting. And the wainscoting is original from, 30, 35 years ago, and it's all brown. I've had a couple of designers recently come in and say, you got to paint it all white because white is the way to go. And I'm going, no, what a crime. How could you take all this wood and paint it white, but they want to paint it all white?
Yeah, but that's what they do. But, it's funny that you're saying that because I have two homes. My city home is about... it was built in like 1905, and it has oak wainscoting that's dark, that we never painted, never touched. So there's a heavy feeling to it, but it's a cozy, homey feeling, and I love it. Here at our country house, and we're in a 150-year-old house here, there is wainscoting as well. But my partner just wants that clean, airy, modern feel, and he insisted on painting it white. So we painted our wainscoting white. It looks good, and the room looks a lot bigger, more spacious, and very bright and airy. But yeah, I'm with you. I really like the old wood, but it's a personal thing.
So Jennifer, is it your magazine's sort of mission to profile different designers like this gentleman?
Yeah, I mean, I really like, giving, every designer as much as possible a voice, because I think the great thing with design is that everyone really is different and unique in their own right. And it's like, I feel like Alessandro really is different than what people might imagine from a typical designer. And I feel like, there's sometimes a stereotype with designers where people just profile them. But the reality is with him, you just don't know what you're going to expect. I don't know, I even asked him, I said, one day, do you wake up and you're Alessandro and it's like, what's your next alias when you do the Amal restaurant and then you did Sophia? And he's just like, no, for me, he's like, every story for me has to have a really good narrative. And I have to think of who my audience is. And it's not about me. It really is about them. So I think that really sunk in. So he really doesn't make it about himself. He's not, he doesn't really exhibit that. He really does care about creating that experience for the patron that's coming in. So I think that's what's really great. And it's like in the magazine, we do our best to, give different designers voices. And in our design issue cover, which is the one that we did before this one, there was 7 women that were featured on the cover of that magazine. And the whole thing about that cover, as you might remember, it was about showing, that each designer is different. Each one, has their own personality. And I think that's what makes design really special and unique.
If people want to read about Alessandro, how do they get a copy of your magazine?
So as of December the 17th, we're going to be on the newsstands all over Ontario and the Toronto GTA. You can go to Shoppers Drug Mart, Indigo, Chapters, Loblaws, Walmart, Rexall, and you can pick up a magazine. So just be on the lookout. December 17th, the magazines will be out.
Living Lux.
Living Lux magazine.
Excellent. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back. And then I'm going to ask Jeanne Beker to tell us a little bit about her history and her career and where she sees design and fashion going in the future. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're talking about design, fashion, where it's going, designers, etc., with Jeanne Beker, who I don't think anyone in Toronto needs an introduction about, and Jennifer Lipkowitz, who is the publisher of a new magazine called Living Lux that I've had the pleasure of meeting and interviewing about her prior magazine before. And we've just finished speaking about the current December magazine. But Jeanne, since we've got you, I wonder, you've been an icon in Canada from a fashion and design standpoint. In this era of COVID-19, people have been talking about how, the digital economy has accelerated 5 years in 5 months or 8 years in 8 months. And we're becoming, it would appear, even more dominated by, American big websites, Amazon and fashion brands and things like this. Is there a future for Canadian designers, whether they be fashion designers or interior designers?
Oh, unquestionably. And I still, do believe that the world is a global village, especially nowadays. It doesn't really matter where you're from. You can make your voice heard on a variety of platforms. And as you said, with the advent of the digital reality, boy, it really, you can do it from anywhere. The bottom line, though, is because we have so many fewer people in this country than we do, say, compared to the States, we have like 1/10 population. That's problematic because if we don't support our own, they don't really have much hope for survival. And that is something that I really, really I'm so involved with now, just trying to spread the word of supporting local talent, supporting local designers. I've for a long time encouraged people to buy Canadian fashion. Otherwise, our Canadian fashion industry wouldn't have had a chance. I mean, I got the Order of Canada, my best accessory, for promoting Canadian designers. So that's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. Very, very passionate about that. I still, though, don't see, I mean, it's getting better, but I don't see enough of us really making it our business to try and look for that Canadian product over the American or European or, foreign product that's out there, because there's so much of it. So, but you're asking, is there a hope? Whenever there's talent, whenever there's a new point of view, whenever there's passion and and forward movement, there's hope. And I think that's the most important thing, that we have such an incredible community of designers in this country, and so many young burgeoning talents that are going through the design schools. Even in this country, we have some very good design schools. I'm on the advisory board of the Ryerson Fashion School, for example. They're turning out some great talent. And these kids come out of school and they're ready to, they want to go to the UK and, you know, intern at the McQueen studio, and they want to go to Paris and work at a Parisian fashion house because they want to broaden their perspectives. And I think that's really important. We've got to, you know, get out there in the world. It's not just about, you know, keeping ourselves insular. It really is about getting out there and showing the world what we have to offer. And you know, it's still sad to say that very few Canadian designers have really made it on the world stage. And I think it's been a matter of finances, because we don't have the marketing budgets that their European or American counterparts have. But you know, it has started. It's a lot better than when I started covering the fashion scene in the mid 80s. And you have people like Kate Middleton, you know, or Meghan Markle wearing Canadian designers and getting, you know, the spotlight on some of these incredible Canadian garments, and that's great. But you know, the borders to some degree though have dissipated too. So it's an enigmatic situation. It's, you know,
Is it a problem that we no longer have Toronto Fashion Week or some of the opportunities to exhibit?
No, it's, you know what, I hate to say it, I'm sorry to say it, but I said it for a long time, even before it really kind of dissolved. Those fashion weeks are over. It's an archaic, it made sense for a long time. And not to say that there won't be, you know, set times of the year where people will want to see what's new and what's happening. But the way things work now, it's just different. It's going to be a long time before masses of people are going to be gathering in some kind of venue to watch a catwalk show. I mean, if that ever will even return, I'm not sure. Now people are staging shows digitally, you know, so you can turn on your computer and watch a fabulous fashion show, or people are making fashion films, or the House of Balenciaga recently announced that they were going to be showing their next collection via a video game. So there are all these different platforms now that are becoming more and more important. And that whole idea of going and sitting with, you know, 500 people in some kind of venue and watching, you know, models walk down a runway wearing, you know, the newest in the fashions, that is really falling by the wayside very quickly. They're much more interesting, newer ways of showing fashion. I personally am totally going to miss those fashion shows because I was an actress. That's how I started out in this business, and I love the theater, and I love that whole the excitement of sitting there and watching, you know, a live show that, you know, right there in the flesh, or the models are right up beside you. I mean, it's just exhilarating for me. But I think those days are really kind of
tell us a little bit about how you got started in the business, if you could.
Whoa. Okay. Well, to make a very long story kind of short, I started out wanting to be an actress, and I started acting professionally when I was 16 years old in Toronto. I always loved fashion, of course, but I never wanted to be involved in the fashion scene. I wanted to be on stage or on television, and I was on a TV series, and I did some parts actually, you know, in movies, and I did some commercials. And then when I was 19 years old, I decided I had to go to New York to study acting if I wanted to be a real serious actress. So I took off for New York, lived there for a year, went to this great acting school, the HB Studio, came back, went to York University because I thought, now I have to get, you know, smart intellectually if I really want to be a great actress. But after studying in New York, York University just wasn't cutting it for me. So I became intrigued with the art of mime because it was about technique, and it was the kind of thing where you either mastered it or you didn't. You either created the illusion or you didn't. So there was all this technical know-how that you had to master. And anyway, I became very intrigued with that. And I went to Paris to study mime with the old man that taught Marcel Marceau. And it was incredible. This is like 1973, 74. So I lived in Paris for a year studying mime.
You lived in Paris for a year studying mime? That's wild.
I know, because what's even wilder, Brian, is when I moved back from Paris in 1974, I went back to university because I still thought I should get that academic education, but really wasn't into that. Then in 1975, because of love, I fell in love with a guy who was going to study folklore at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland. And he asked me to go with him. So I said, sure, why not? So I arrived in Newfoundland. I was the only mime artist in the province. And I ended up with a job in radio. I started working for CBC Radio covering the arts.
Isn't mime silent? Like mime and radio sort of don't make sense.
I know, but I told you, it's all about the unexpected, Brian. It's that juxtaposition that we love. Go figure, the only mime artist in the province ends up only in Newfoundland can that happen. So I worked at CBC Radio for 3 years as a writer performer and did a lot of arts coverage. And they weren't doing a lot of arts coverage back then. CBC, we think of CBC now, oh, it's all about the arts. No, in those days they were talking about consumer issues and the fisheries and the oil refineries. And there I was talking about the arts. Did that for 3 years, moved back to Toronto in 1978, knocked on every radio station door. And the program director at 1050 Chum, this brilliant guy, J.R. Wood, said, you know what, you've got a lot of experience and we like the sound of your voice. We're going to hire you. We don't know what we want you to do yet. They tried me out as a disc jockey. And they ended up giving me a slot as their good news girl. So I did these 18 Chum reports a week on 1050 Chum, which was the station I grew up as a little kid listening to that station under the covers. I mean, this was like my fantasy job. Did that for 3 years. Now, in 1970, I did it for 3 years, but after the first year, this is now we're 1979, Moses Neimer Moses Neimer sold City TV to Alan Waters, who owned Chum Radio. And they decided to do a music show on TV at City TV. So they decided to take me, who was the Good News radio girl, and JD Roberts, who is now John Roberts of Fox News. They decided to take us over to the TV end of things. And we started doing a show called The New Music, which was this fabulous music magazine show that a lot of kids across the country watched religiously. And, and then the rest is history, because then we started Much Music in about 1983. And in 1985, I started Fashion Television. So yeah, that's it. That's my story and I'm sticking to it. Incredible. I got the chance to blaze a lot of trails. No one was putting rock stars on TV in those days. This is pre-MTV, 1979, that I started doing the show, The New Music at City TV. And Fashion Television, when I started in 1985, no one was putting fashion on TV in that way. I mean, now it's so ubiquitous. But in those days, if you wanted to watch fashion or see fashion, you had to pick up a fashion magazine. And we really brought it to the people and we helped democratize it and seriously created a monster, because now, there are thousands of kids coming out of these fashion schools. They all want to work in the business because we made it look like a very glamorous business, which it is, but it's also a cutthroat, gritty, cruel, dark business. It has that side to it too. And now, as you pointed out earlier, because of, the way the world's gone and the pandemic, fashion is, we're holding on for dear life to, what does fashion mean to us? How is it going to survive going forward?
I went downtown for a meeting, I guess a week ago, and wore my suit for the first time in 3 months. I think maybe the fifth time in 9 months. And, I've got a whole closet full of some fancy suits that I've spent thousands of dollars on, and I don't wear them anymore. And I can imagine if you're female and you've got, suits and gowns and business attire and beautiful evening wear, when do you wear those?
You're wearing it now.
First time, just for, I had Jeanne Beker on. I had to put a jacket.
Listen, but you have to believe that it's going to come back, because it will come back. it might not come back in the exact same way, but I think as humans, I mean, we're the only creatures on the planet that do dress up. And it's the kind of thing that does humanize us in a way. I mean, some people dress up their little doggies, I'm sure, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, we really look to fashion as a great form of self-expression, and we have through the ages, from time immemorial. So dressing up is so great for the spirit. It's such a great way to communicate. It says so much about who we are as people. And I'm just hoping that we get back to really appreciating garments. And of course, now we're appreciating these comfortable garments. And a lot of us are wearing like tracksuits, and it's like it doesn't matter anymore because you're living your life via Zoom. But that is going to change. And I think it's going to come back with a vengeance, because I think we'll have missed it so much. I go into my closet sometimes and I cry because all these clothes that have such great sentimentally, I get sentimentally attached to my clothes, as I'm sure a lot of people do. And I think of, I wore this, when this happened to me, and this is bringing back memories of that fabulous night. And it's just like, wow, we really don't need as many clothes. You're right, we don't. But maybe if we invest in clothes that are a little more special, I mean, that cheap and cheerful stuff has got to go down the drain.
Well, it's interesting because after the 1918-1919 Spanish flu, which killed, 50 million people or something like that. So, terrible pandemic, frankly, far worse than the current pandemic. Yeah. We ended up with the Roaring Twenties and Great Gatsby and Flapper Girls and, speakeasies, and people seem to go crazy. And so, all these people that are worried that it's, this new normal and we're all going to be living at home, commuting to work via Zoom all the time, 1920, things went not just back to where they were, but almost to an extreme where people really wanted to get together and party.
I mean, I can't wait to get back out there and really turn it up. I just really obviously love getting dressed up as I think most people do. I mean, maybe some don't care about it as much, but I think because of the planet, we've got to think more responsibly about our wardrobes. And I think the biggest conversation in fashion right now is sustainability. And we all have to really think about where are our clothes being made? How are they being made? How long will they last us? Because the best designed clothes should last forever. I mean, unless we get too fat and grow out of them. The objects in my wardrobe that I love the most are the ones that are well designed, that I did pay a little more for, that do have that longevity to them. They'll never go out of style. And buying vintage, which is, a wonderful thing to do for the planet as well. Yeah. So there are a lot of great things to look forward to, when this is all said and done. And let's just pray that it's sooner rather than later.
Coming back to your career just for a second, if we could, I guess I would have thought that you wanted to be a fashion host on fashion television from day one, but it's such a circuitous route that you wandered to get to where you are. And I guess if you had to say something to young people today, is it be open to that circuitous route? Go to France and take a mime course. Go to Newfoundland and become a radio host.
Yeah, it's like what I tell my daughters, and they're, living very unconventional lives as well. One's living off the grid in the Yukon. She's a musician, in the forest. And the other one's like living at our family farm. And she's an animator with an animation studio at the farm and an organic farmer. Whoever thought that my kids would be, such nature lovers. But I really believe that you've got to live life large. As large as you can. And I cannot tell you, Brian, how many times during these past months of this pandemic have I sat there and thought, boy, I'm 68 years old now. And am I ever happy that I took those chances, that I went off the beaten track, that I blazed some of my own trails, never wanted to follow in somebody else's footsteps. I never really had any role models because what I was doing was so new at the time. With the work, especially that I was doing in media. But you absolutely have to take chances, no guts, no glory. You have to think outside the box, and you have to just go with the flow. It all sounds like such a cliche, but it's so true. My parents are Holocaust survivors, and what they brought me up with was this: dream, believe, don't be afraid, and never give up. And if you keep those four things in mind all the time, no matter what, I think they'll serve you incredibly well. And for me too, because my parents' lives were, nipped in their youth, and they didn't get a chance to realize so many of their dreams, I thought, well, I couldn't just have a good life or a great life. I had to have a fantabulous life. I really had to go for the gusto. And I think I did. And I, knock on wood, so far, so good. I've had an extraordinary life, and I'm just grateful for every second of it. I worked my butt off, but I was passionate about what I did. And as long as you have that passion, you'll be okay.
Jeanne Beker, thank you so much for sharing that. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments with Jennifer Lipkowitz of Living Lux Magazine and Jeanne Beker in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. What a fascinating conversation with Jeanne Beker, chatting about her career and the circuitous route that she followed, and also with Jennifer Lipkowitz, the publisher of Living Lux Magazine, and about her new magazine that's coming out December 17th. And Jennifer, who's the cover about?
So the cover is Alessandra Munge, and Jeanne Beker wrote our cover story. A lot of great articles in this magazine and a lot of talented designers that are being showcased as well.
And every Thursday you've got what?
A live Instagram segment. Our Instagram handle is Living Lux Magazine. So definitely check it out. We always do a live giveaway, and we normally have some designers, some celebrities, and some business owners that connect live on our Instagram segment.
Excellent. Well, good luck. And one of these days, hopefully I'll get on the cover, or at least inside the magazine. Jeanne Beker, you've got a podcast that you've launched, I understand.
Yes, I launched a podcast this fall called Beyond Style Matters. I am a style editor with TSC, Today's Shopping Choice, which of course is the shopping channel that Rogers owns. And now we're doing a podcast called Beyond Style Matters, but it is not to do with the sartorial, really. It's to do with the way we move through the world, the style in which we decide to, take the bull by the horns and just go for it. And I've had some conversations with some fabulous people. Michael Bublé, who's just up. That was a great conversation. There's so many people: Sandra Bernhard, Betsy Johnson, Isaac Mizrahi. The list goes on. Kim Cattrall. Some of them are from the world of fashion, but some of them aren't really. But they all have great style, and it's just a wonderful way to get up close and personal with people and talk about the attitudes that they have to have in order to make it in this world.
And just Google Jeanne Beker if we want to get the podcast.
Yeah, Beyond Style Matters, available wherever you get your podcast. Hosted by me, Jeanne Beker.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate hearing about the cover of Living Lux Magazine and the story that you wrote. And I really appreciated hearing your story, Jeanne. I loved your Live Life Large comment. And I loved what your parents had to say. Can you remind us again about the motto that your parents gave you?
Just 4 easy steps. You got to dream, you got to believe, don't be afraid, and never give up.
Dream, believe, don't be afraid, and never give up. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, what a great conversation tonight with Jeanne Beker, I apologize, and Jennifer Lipkowitz of Living Lux Magazine. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. That's the Brian Crombie Radio Hour for tonight. You can find me every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock at 9:60 a.m., streamed online at saga960am.ca, or all my videocasts and podcasts are available on my website, briancrombie.com. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.